Here, I am not a purple-faced old man.
No, not yet. But then, you do know all about food. Do you?
Now then, Sybil, you must take a little tonight. Special occasion, you know.
Yes, go on, Mama. You must drink to our health. Very well then. Just a little. Thank you. All right, Edward. I will ring from the drawing room when we want a coffee. Probably in about half an hour.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, this is very nice. Very nice. Good dinner too, Sybil. Tell cook from me.
Absolutely. First class.
Arthur, you're not supposed to say such things.
Oh, come. Come, I am treating Gerald like one of the family. And I am sure you won't object.
Go on, Gerald. Just you object?
Wouldn't dream of it. In fact, I insist upon being one of the family enough. I have been trying long enough. Haven't I? Haven't I? You know I have.
Certainly, she does. Yes, except for all last summer, when you never came near me, and I wondered what had happened to you.
And have told you. I was awfully busy at the walls all that time.
Yes, that's what you say. Now, Sheila, don't tease him. When you are married, you will realize that men with important work to do sometimes have to spend nearly all their time and energy on their business. You will have to get used to that. Just as I had. I don't believe I will. So you be careful.
Oh, I will. I will.
Now, what's the joke?
I don't know, really. Suddenly I felt I just had to laugh.
You are squiffy.
I am not.
What an expression, Sheila. Really, the things you girls pick up these days.
If you think that's the best she can do.
Don't be an ass, Eric. Now stop it, you two. Arthur, what about this famous toast of yours?
Yes, of course. Well, Gerald, I know. You agreed that we should only have this quiet little family party. It's a pity Sir George and Lady Craft can't be with us. But they are abroad, so it can't be helped. As I told you, they sent me a very nice cable. Couldn't be nicer. I'm not sorry that we are celebrating quietly like this.
Really, much nicer.
I agree.
So do I. But it makes speech making more difficult.
Well, don't do any. We will drink their health and have done with it.
No, we won't. It's one of the happiest nights of my life. And one day I hope, Eric, when you have a daughter of your own, you will understand why. Gerald, I'm going to tell you frankly that your engagement to Sheila means a tremendous lot to me. She will make you happy, and I'm sure you will make her happy. You are just the kind of son-in-law I always wanted. Your father and I have been friendly rivals in business for some time now. Though Crops Limited are both older and bigger than Burling and Company. And now you have brought us together, and perhaps we may look forward to the time when Crops and Burlings are no longer competing but are working together for lower cost and higher prices.
I think my father would agree to that.
Now, Arthur, I don't think you ought to talk business on an occasion like this. Neither do I. All wrong.
Quite so, I agree with you. I only mentioned it in passing. What I did want to say was that Sheila is a lucky girl, and I think you are a pretty fortunate young man too, Gerald.
I know I am.
So here is the wishing the pair of you the very best that life can bring. Gerald and Sheila.
Yes, Jared. Yes, Sheila, darling. Our congratulations and very best wishes.
Thank you.
Eric,
All the best. She has got a nasty temper sometimes. But she is not bad really. Good word, Sheila.
I can't drink to this. Can I? Whom do I drink?
You can drink to me.
All right then. I drink to you, Gerald.
Thank you. And I drink to you. And hope I can make you as happy as you deserve to be.
You be careful, or I will start crying.
Well, perhaps this will help to stop it.
Gerald, you have got it. Is it the one you wanted me to have?
Yes, the very one.
Oh, it's wonderful. Look, Mommy. Isn't it beautiful? Oh, darling.
Study the nerves.
I think it's perfect. Now I really feel engaged. So you would, darling. It's a lovely ring. Be careful with it. Careful? I will never let it go out of my sight for an instant. Well, it just came at the right moment. That was very clever of you, Till. Now, Arthur, if you have no more to say, I think Sheila and I better go into the drawing room and leave you men.
I just want to say this. Are you listening, Sheila? This concerns you too. And after all, I don't often make speeches at you.
I'm sorry, Dad. Actually, I was listening.
I am delighted about this engagement. And I hope it won't be too long before you are married. And I want to say this. There's a good deal of silly talk about these days. But I say, you can ignore all this silly pessimistic talk. Last month, just because the miners came on strike, there's a lot of wild talk about possible labor trouble in the near future. Don't worry.
I believe you are right, sir. What about war?
Glad you mentioned it, Eric. I'm coming to that. Just because the Kaiser makes a speech or two, or a few German officers have too much to drink and begin talking nonsense, you will hear some people say that war is inevitable. And to that I say, nonsense. The Germans don't want war. Nobody wants war except some. Yes, I know. But still, just let me finish, Eric. You have a lot to learn yet. And I am talking as a hard-headed practical man of business. And I say, there isn't a chance of war. The world is developing so fast that it will make war impossible. Look at the progress we are making. Look at the way the automobiles making headway, bigger and faster all the time. And then ships with every luxury and absolutely unsingable sails next to New York in 5 days.
Arthur,
Yes, my dear, I know. I'm talking too much. But you youngsters, just remember what I said.
yes, of course, dear. Well, don't keep Gerald here too long. Eric, I want you a minute.
Cigar?
No, thanks. Can't really enjoy them.
You don't know what you are missing. I like a good cigar. Help yourself.
Thank you.
Thanks. By the way, there is something I would like to mention. In strict confidence while we are by ourselves, I have an idea that your mother, Lady Croft, while she doesn't object to my girl, feels You might have done better for yourself socially. No, Gerard, that's all right. Don't blame her. She comes from an old country family, landed people, and so forth. So it's only natural. But what I wanted to say is, there's a fair chance that I might find my way into the next honors list. Just a...
Oh, I see. Congratulations.
Thanks. But it's a bit too early for that. So don't say anything. But I have heard a hint or two. You see, I was Lord Mayor here 2 years ago when royalty visited us. And I have always been regarded as a sound, useful party man. So well, I gather there's a very good chance of a knighthood. So long as we behave ourselves, don't get into the police court or start a scandal, yeah?
You seem to be a nice, well-behaved family.
We think we are.
What's the joke? Started telling stories?
No. Want another glass of port?
Yes, please. Mother says we must not stay too long, but I don't think it matters. I left them talking about clothes again. You would think a girl had never any clothes before she gets married. Women are crazy about them.
Yes. But you have got to remember, my boy, that clothes mean something quite different to a woman. Not just something to wear, and not only something to make them look prettier, but well, a sort of sign, a token of their self-respect.
That's true.
Yes, I remember.
Well, what do you remember?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Sounds a bit fishy to me.
But this is the point. I don't want to lecture you young men. But what so many of you don't seem to understand now, when things are so much easier, is that a man has to make his own way, has to look after himself and his family too. Of course, when he has one. And so long as he does that, he won't come to much harm. But the way some of these cranks talk and write now, you would think everybody has to look after everybody else, as if we were all mixed up together.
Somebody at the front door.
Edward will answer it. Well, have another glass of port, Gerald, and then we will join the ladies. That will stop me giving you good advice.
Yes, you have piled it on a bit tonight, Father.
Special occasion. I'm feeling contented for once. I wanted you to have the benefit of my experience.
Please, sir. An inspector has called.
An inspector? What kind of inspector?
A police inspector. He says his name is Inspector Gould.
Don't know him. Does he want to see me?
Yes, sir. He says it is important.
All right, Edward. Show him in here. Give us some more light. I'm still on the bench. It may be something about a warrant.
Sure to be. Unless Eric's been up to something. And that would be awkward, wouldn't it?
Very.
Here, what do you mean?
Only something we were talking about when you were out. A joke, really.
Well, I don't think it's very funny.
What's the matter with you?
Nothing?
Inspector Gould.
Mr. Burley?
Yes. Sit down, Inspector.
Thank you, sir. But I will stand.
Have a glass of port or a little whiskey?
No. Thank you, Mr. Burley. I am on duty.
You are new, aren't you?
Yes, sir. Only recently transferred.
I thought you must be. I was an alderman for years and Lord Mayor 2 years ago. and I am still on the bench. So, I know the Bromley police officers pretty well. And I thought I had never seen you before.
Quite so.
Well, what can I do for you? Some trouble about a warrant?
No, Mr. Burling.
Well, what is it then?
2 hours ago, a young woman died on the infirmary. She had been taken there this afternoon because she had swallowed a lot of strong disinfectant. Burned her inside out, of course.
My God.
Yes. She was in great agony. They did everything they could for her at the infirmary. But she died. Suicide, of course.
Yes, hurried business. But I don't understand why you should come here, Inspector.
I have been drawn to the room she had. And she had left a letter there and a sort of diary. Like a lot of these young women who get into various kinds of trouble, she had used more than one name. But her original name, her real name, was Eva Smith.
Eva Smith?
Do you remember her, Mr. Burling?
No. I seem to remember hearing that name, Eva Smith, somewhere. But it doesn't convey anything to me. And I don't see where I come into this.
She was employed in your works at one time.
Oh, that's it, is it? Well, we have several hundred young women there, you know, and they keep changing.
This young woman, Eva Smith, was out of the ordinary. I found a photograph of her in her lodgings. Perhaps you would remember her from that.
Any particular reason why I shouldn't see this girl's photograph, Inspector?
There might be.
And the same applies to me, I suppose?
Yes.
I can imagine what it could be.
Neither can I.
And I must say, I agree with them, Inspector.
It's the way I like to go to work. One person and one line of inquiry at a time. Otherwise, there is a muddle.
I see. Sensible, really. You have heard enough of that quote, Eric.
I think you remember Eva Smith now. Don't you, Mr. Burling?
Yes, I do. She was one of my employees, and then I discharged her.
Is that why she committed suicide? When was this, Father?
Just keep quiet, Eric, and don't get excited. This girl left us nearly 2 years ago. Let me see. It must have been in the early autumn of 1910.
Yes. End of September 1910.
That's right.
Look here, sir. Wouldn't you rather I was out of this?
I don't mind your being here, Gerald, and I am sure you have no objection. Have you, Inspector? Perhaps I ought to explain first that this is Mr. Gerald Croft, the son of Sir George Croft. You know, Crofts Limited.
Mr. Gerald Croft, huh?
Yes. Incidentally, we have been modestly celebrating his engagement to my daughter Sheila.
I see. Mr. Croft is going to marry Miss Sheila Burling?
I hope so.
Then I would prefer you to stay.
Oh, all right.
Look, there is nothing mysterious or scandalous about this business. At least, not Not so far as I am concerned. It's perfectly straightforward case, and as it happened, more than 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago, obviously, it has nothing whatever to do with the wretched girl's suicide. Yeah, Inspector?
No, sir. I can't agree with you there.
Why not?
What happened to her then may have determined what happened to her afterwards. And what happened to her afterwards may have driven her to suicide. A chain of events.
Oh well, put like that, there is something in what you say. Still, I can't accept any responsibility. If we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody we had anything to do with, it would be very awkward, wouldn't it?
Very awkward.
We would all be in an impossible position, wouldn't we?
By Jove, yes. And as you were saying, Dad, a man has to look after himself.
Yes, well, we needn't go into all that.
Going to what?
Oh, just before you came, I had been giving this young man a little good advice. Now, about this girl, Eva Smith, I remember her quite well now. She was a lively, good-looking girl, country-bred, I fancy. And she had been working in one of our machine shops for over a year. A good worker too. In fact, the foreman there told me he was ready to promote her into what we call a leading operator, head of a small group of girls. But after they came back from their holidays that August, they were all rather restless and they suddenly decided to ask for more money. They were averaging about 22, which was neither more nor less than is paid generally in our industry. They wanted the rates raised so that they could average about 25 shillings a week. I refused, of course.
Why?
Did you say why?
Yes. Why did you refuse?
Well, Inspector, I don't see that it's any concern of yours how I choose to run my business. Is it now?
It might be, you know.
I don't like that tone.
I'm sorry. But you asked me a question.
And you asked me a question before that. A quite unnecessary question too.
It's my duty to ask questions.
Well, it's my duty to keep labor costs down. And if I had agreed to this demand for a new rate, we would have added about 12% to our labor cost. Does that satisfy you? So I refused. Said I couldn't consider it. We were paying the usual rates, and if they didn't like those rates, they could go and work somewhere else. It's a free country, I told them.
It isn't. If we can't go and work somewhere else,
Quite so.
Look, just you keep out of this. You hadn't even started in the works when this happened. So, they went on strike. That didn't last long, of course.
Not if it was just after the holidays. They would be all broke.
Right, Gerald. They mostly were. And so was the strike after a week or two. Pitiful affair. Well, we let them all come back at the old rates, except the 4 or 5 ringleaders who had started the trouble. I went down myself and told them to clear out. And this girl, Eva Smith, was one of them.
You couldn't have done anything else.
he could have kept her on instead of throwing her out. I call it tough luck.
Rubbish. If you don't come down sharply on some of these people, they would soon be asking for the earth.
I should say so.
They might. But after all, it is better to ask for the earth than to take it.
What did you say your name was, Inspector?
Goole. Goole.
How do you get on with our Chief Constable, Colonel Roberts?
I don't see much of him.
Perhaps I ought to warn you that he is an old friend of mine and that I see him fairly frequently. We play golf together sometimes up at the West Bromley.
I don't play golf.
I didn't suppose you did.
Well, I think it's a damn shame.
No, I have never wanted to play.
No, I mean about this girl, Eva Smith. Why shouldn't they try for higher wages? We try for the highest possible prices. And I don't see why she should have been sacked just because she had a bit more spirit than the others. You said yourself, she was a good worker. I would have let her stay.
Unless you brighten your ideas, you will never be in a position to let anybody stay or to tell anybody to go. It's about time you learn to face a few responsibilities.
Well, we don't need to tell the inspector all about that, do we?
I don't see we need to tell the inspector anything more. In fact, there is nothing I can tell him. I told the girl to clear out and she went. That is the last I heard of her. Have you any idea what happened to her after that? Get into trouble? Go on the streets?
No, she didn't exactly go on the streets.
What's this about streets? Oh, sorry, I didn't know. Mom sent me in to ask you why you didn't come along to the drawing room.
We shall be along in a minute now. Just finishing.
I am afraid not.
There is nothing else, you know. I have just told you that.
What's all this about?
Nothing to do with you, Sheila. Run along.
No. Wait a minute, Miss Burling.
Look here, Inspector. I consider this uncalled for and officious. I have half a mind to report you. I have told you all I know. And it doesn't seem to me very important. And now, there isn't the slightest reason why my daughter should be dragged into this unpleasant business.
What business? What's happening?
I am a police inspector, Miss Burling. This afternoon, a young woman drank some disinfectant and died after several hours of agony. Tonight in the infirmary.
Oh, how horrible. Was it an accident?
No. She wanted to end her life. She felt she couldn't go on any longer.
Well, don't tell me. That's because I discharged her from my employment nearly 2 years ago.
That might have started it.
Did you, Dad?
Yes, the girl had been causing trouble in the works. I was quite justified.
Yes, I think you will. I know, we would have done the same thing. Don't look like that, Sheila.
Sorry, it's just that I can't help thinking about this girl. Destroying herself so horribly. And I have been so happy tonight. Oh, I wish you hadn't told me. What was she like? Quite young?
Yes. 24.
Pretty?
She wasn't pretty when I saw her today. But she had been pretty. Very pretty.
That's enough of that.
And I don't really see that this inquiry gets you anywhere, Inspector. It's what happened to her since she left Mr. Burling's works. That's important.
Obviously, I suggested that some time ago.
And we can't help you there because we don't know.
Are you sure? You don't know?
And are you suggesting now that one of them knows something about this girl?
Yes.
You didn't come here just to see me then.
No.
Well, of course. If I had known that earlier, I wouldn't have called you officious and talked about reporting you. You understand that, don't you, Inspector? I thought that for some reason best known to yourself, you were making the most of this tiny bit of information I could give you. I am sorry. This makes a difference. You sure of your facts?
Some of them, yes.
I can't think they can be of any great consequence.
The girl is dead, though.
What do you mean by saying that? You talk as if we were responsible?
Just a minute, Sheila. Now, Inspector, perhaps you and I had better go and talk this over quietly in a corner.
Why should you? He's finished with you. He says it's one of us now.
Yes, and I am trying to settle it sensibly for you.
Well, there is nothing to settle as far as I am concerned. I have never known an Eva Smith.
Neither have I.
Was that her name? Eva Smith?
Yes.
Never heard it before.
So, where are you now, Inspector?
Where I was before, Mr. Crawford. I told you that, like a lot of these young women, she had used more than one name. She was still Eva Smith when Mr. Burling sacked her for wanting 25 shillings a week instead of 22. But after that, she stopped being Eva Smith. Perhaps she had enough of it.
Can't blame her.
I think it was a mean thing to do. Perhaps that spoiled everything for her.
Rubbish. Do you know what happened to this girl after she left to my works?
Yes, she was out of work for next 2 months. Both her parents were dead, so that she had no home to go back to. And she hadn't been able to save much out of what Burling and Company had paid her. So that after 2 months, with no work, no money coming in, and living in lodgings with no relatives to help her, she was feeling desperate.
I should think so. It's a rotten shame.
There are a lot of young women living that sort of existence in every city and big town in this country, Miss Burling. If there weren't, the factories and warehouses wouldn't know where to look for cheap labor. Ask your father.
But these girls are not cheap labor. They are people.
I have had that notion myself from time to time. In fact, I have thought that it would do us all a bit of good if sometimes we tried to put ourselves in the place of these young women counting their pennies.
Yes, I expect it would. But what happened to her then?
She had what seemed to her a wonderful stroke of luck. She was taken on in a shop, and a good shop too. Millwards.
Millwards? We go there. In fact, I was there this afternoon. For your benefit.
Good.
Yes, she was lucky to get taken on at Millwards.
That's what she thought. And it happened that at the beginning of December that year, 1910, there was a good deal of influenza about, and Millward suddenly found themselves short-handed. So, that gave her a chance. It seems she liked working there. It was a nice change from a factory. She enjoyed being among pretty clothes, I have no doubt. And now, she felt she was making a good fresh start. You can imagine how she felt.
Yes, of course.
And then she got herself into trouble there, I suppose.
After about a couple of months, just when she felt she was settling down nicely, they told her she would have to go.
not doing her work properly?
There was nothing wrong with the way she was doing her work. They admitted that.
There must have been something wrong.
All she knew was that a customer complained about her. And so she had to go.
When was this?
At the end of January last year.
What? What did this girl look like?
If you will come over here, I will show you.
What's the matter with her?
She recognized her from the photograph, didn't she?
Yes,
Why the devil? Do you want to go upsetting the child like that?
I didn't do it. She is upsetting herself.
Well, why? Why?
I don't know yet. That is something I have to find out.
Well, if you don't mind, I will find out first.
Shall I go after her?
No, leave this to me. I must also have a word with my wife. Tell her what's happening. We were having a nice family celebration tonight, and a nasty mess you have made of it now, haven't you?
That's more or less what I was thinking earlier tonight when I was in the infirmary looking at what was left of Eva Smith. A nice little promising life there, I thought. And a nasty mess somebody is made of it.
I would like to have a look at that photograph now, Inspector.
All in good time.
I don't see why.
You heard what I said before, Mr. Croft. One line of inquiry at a time. Otherwise, we will all be talking at once and won't know where we are. If you have anything to tell me, you will have an opportunity of doing it soon.
Well, I don't suppose I have.
I'm sorry, but you see, we were having a little party, and I have had a few drinks, including rather a lot of champagne. And I have got a headache. And as I am only in the way here, I think I would better turn in.
And I think you would better stay here.
Why should I?
It might be less trouble. If you turn in, you might have to turn out again soon.
Getting a bit heavy-handed, aren't you, Inspector?
Possibly. But if you are easy with me, I am easy with you.
After all, you know, we are respectable citizens and not criminals.
Sometimes there isn't much difference as you think. Often, if it was left to me, I wouldn't know where to draw the line.
Fortunately, it isn't left to you, is it?
No, it isn't. But some things are left to me. Inquiries of this sort, for instance. Well, Miss Burling,
You knew it was me all the time, didn't you?
I had an idea it might be from something the girl herself wrote.
I have told my father. He didn't seem to think it amounted to much. But I felt rotten about it at the time. And now I feel a lot worse. Did it make much difference to her?
Yes, I am afraid it did. It was the last real steady job she had. When she lost it, for no reason that she could discover, she decided she might as well try another kind of life.
So, I am really responsible?
No, not entirely. A good deal happened to her after that. But you are partly to blame. just as your father is.
But what did Sheila do?
I went to the manager at Millwards and I told him that if they didn't get rid of that girl, I would never go near the place again and I would persuade mother to close our account with them.
And why did you do that?
Because I was in a furious temper.
And what had this girl done to make you lose your temper?
When I was looking at myself in the mirror, I caught sight of her, smiling at the assistant, and I was furious with her. I had been in a bad temper anyhow.
And was it the girl's fault?
No, not really. It was my own fault. Alright, Gerald, you needn't look at me like that. At least, I'm trying to tell the truth. I expect you have done things you are ashamed of too.
Well, I never said I hadn't.
Never mind about that. You can settle that between you afterwards. What happened?
I had gone in to try something on. It was an idea of my own. Mother had been against it, and so had the assistant, but I insisted. As soon as I tried it on, I knew it just didn't suit me at all. I looked silly in the thing. This girl had held the dress up as if she was wearing it, and it just suited her, just as I was the wrong type, and she was very pretty too. Well, when I tried the thing on and looked at myself and knew that it was all wrong, I caught sight of this girl smiling at the assistant, as if to say, "Doesn't she look awful?" And I was absolutely furious. I was very rude to both of them. And then I went to the manager and told him that this girl had been very impertinent. And how could I know what would happen afterwards?
In fact, in a kind of way, you might be said to have been jealous of her.
Yes, I suppose so.
And so, you used the power you had as a daughter of a good customer to punish the girl just because she made you feel like that?
Yes, but it didn't seem to be anything very terrible at the time. Don't you understand? And if I could help her now, I would.
Yes, but you can't. It is too late. She is dead.
My God, it's a bit thick when you come to think of it.
Oh, shut up, Eric. I know. It's the only time I have ever done anything like that. I will never do it again to anybody. I have noticed them giving me a sort of look sometimes at Millwards. I noticed it even this afternoon. Oh, why had this to happen?
That's what I asked myself tonight when I was looking at that girl. And then I said to myself, well, we will try to understand why it had to happen. And that's why I am here. And why I am not going until I know all that happened. Eva Smith lost her job with Burling and Company because the strike failed and they were determined not to have another one. At last, she found another job, under what name I don't know, in a big shop, and had to leave there because you were annoyed with yourself and passed the annoyance on to her. Now, she had to try something else. So, first she changed her name to...
Think.
Why should I have known her?
Oh, don't be stupid. We haven't much time. You gave yourself away as soon as he mentioned the other name.
All right. I knew her. Let us leave it at that.
We can't leave it at that.
Now, Listen, darling.
No, that's no use. You not only knew her, but you knew her very well. Otherwise, you wouldn't look so guilty about it. When did you first get to know her? Was it after she left Millwards? When she changed her name, as he said, and began to lead a different sort of life? Were you seeing her last spring and summer? During that time, you hardly came near me and said, "You are so busy." Were you? Yes, of course you were.
I am sorry, Sheila, but it was all over and done with last summer. I hadn't set eyes on the girl for at least 6 months. I don't come into this suicide business.
I thought I didn't. Half an hour ago.
You don't. Neither of us does. So for God's sake, don't say anything to the inspector.
About you and this girl?
Yes, we can keep it from him.
Why? You fool? He knows. Of course he knows. And I hate to think how much he knows. That we don't know yet. You will see. You will see.
Well,
You see? What did I tell you?
what did you tell him?
Inspector, I think Miss Burling ought to be excused any more of this questioning. She had nothing more to tell you. She had a long, exciting and tiring day. We were celebrating our engagement, you know. And now she obviously had about as much as she can stand. You heard her.
He means that I'm getting hysterical now.
And are you?
Probably.
Well, I don't want to keep you here. I have no more questions to ask you.
No, but you haven't finished asking questions. Have you?
No.
You see? Then I am staying.
Why should you? It's bound to be unpleasant and disturbing.
And you think young women ought to be protected against unpleasant and disturbing things?
If possible, yes.
Well, we know one young woman who wasn't, don't we?
I suppose I asked for that.
Be careful. You don't ask for more, Gerald.
I only meant to say to you, why stay when you'll hate it?
It can't be any worse for me than it has been. And it might be better.
I see.
What do you see?
You have been through it, and now you want to see somebody else put through it.
So, that's what you think I'm like? I'm glad I realized it in time, Gerald.
No. I didn't mean.
Yes, you did. And if you had really loved me, you couldn't have said that. You listened to that nice story about me. I got that girl, sacked from Millwards. And now, you have made up your mind. I must obviously be a selfish, vindictive creature.
I neither said that nor even suggested it.
Then why say, I want to see somebody else put through it? That's not what I mean at all.
All right then. I am sorry.
Yes, but you don't believe me. And this is just the wrong time not to believe me.
I can tell you why Miss Berlin wants to stay on and why she says it might be better for her if she did. A girl died tonight. A pretty, lively sort of girl who never did anybody any harm. But she died in misery and agony, hating life.
Don't please. I know, and I can't stop thinking about it.
Now, Miss Berling has just been made to understand what she did to this girl. She feels responsible. And if she leaves us now and doesn't hear any more, then she will feel she is entirely to blame. She will be alone with her responsibility the rest of tonight, all tomorrow, all the next night.
Yes, that's it. And I know I'm to blame. And I'm desperately sorry. But I can't believe. And I won't believe. It's simply my fault that in the end, she committed suicide. That would be too horrible.
You see, we have to share something. If there is nothing else, we will have to share our guilt.
Yes, that's true. You know, I don't understand about you.
There is no reason why you should.
Good evening, Inspector.
Good evening, madam.
I'm Mrs. Burling, you know. My husband has just explained why you're here. And why we will be glad to tell you anything you want to know. I don't think we can help you much.
No, Mother, please.
What's the matter, Sheila?
I know, it sounds silly.
What does?
You see, I feel you're beginning all wrong. And I fear you will say or do something that you will be sorry for afterwards.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sheila.
We all started like that, so confident, so pleased with ourselves, until it began asking us questions.
You seem to have made a great impression on this child, Inspector.
We often do on the young ones. They are more impressionable.
You're looking tired, dear. I think you ought to go to bed and forget about this absurd business. You will feel better in the morning.
Mother, I couldn't possibly go. Nothing could be worse for me. We have settled all that. Until I know why that girl killed herself.
Nothing but morbid curiosity.
No, it isn't.
Please don't contradict me like that. And in any case, I don't suppose for a moment that we can understand why the girl committed suicide. Girls of that class.
Mother, don't. Please don't. For your own sake, as well as ours. You mustn't.
Mustn't? What? Really, Sheila?
You mustn't try to build up a kind of wall between us and that girl. If you do, then the inspector will just break it down. And it will be all the worse when he does.
I don't understand you. Do you?
Yes, and she is right.
I beg your pardon?
I said yes. I do understand her, and she is right.
That I consider is a trifle impertinent, Inspector. Now, what is it, Sheila?
I don't know, perhaps. It's because impertinent is such a silly word.
In any case,
But mother, do stop before it's too late.
if you mean that the inspector will take offense,
No, oh no, I never take offense.
I am glad to hear it.
Let's leave offense out of it, shall we?
I think we would better.
So do I.
I am talking to the inspector now, if you don't mind. I realize that you may have to conduct some sort of inquiry, but I must say that so far you seem to be conducting in a rather peculiar and offensive manner. You know, of course, that my husband was Lord Mayor only 2 years ago, and that he is still a magistrate.
Mrs. Burling, the inspector knows all that. And I don't think it's a very good idea to remind him.
It's crazy. Stop it. Please, mother.
Yes. Now, what about Mr. Burling?
He's coming back in a moment. He's just talking to my son Eric, who seemed to be in an excitable, silly mood.
What's the matter with him?
Eric, oh, I'm afraid he may have had rather too much to drink tonight. We were having a little celebration here.
Isn't he used to drinking?
No, of course not. He's only a boy.
No, he is a young man. And some young men drink far too much.
And Eric is one of them.
Sheila,
I don't want to get poor Eric into trouble. He's probably in enough trouble already. But we must stop these silly pretenses. This isn't the time to pretend that Eric isn't used to drink. He has been steadily drinking too much for the last 2 years.
it isn't true. You know him, Gerald. And you are a man. You must know it isn't true.
Well, Mr. Croft,
I am afraid it is, you know. Actually, I have never seen much of him outside this house. But well, I have gathered that he does drink pretty hard.
And this is the time you choose to tell me?
Yes, of course it is. That's what I meant when I talked about building up a wall. That's sure to be knocked flat. It makes it all harder to bear.
But it is you and not the inspector here who is doing it.
Yes, but don't you see? He hasn't started on you yet.
If necessary, I shall be glad to answer any question the inspector wishes to ask me. Though, I don't know anything about this girl.
we will see. Mrs. Burling,
I have been. Why?
because I shall want to talk to him. Mr. Burling,
I can't see why you should. But if you must, then I suggest you do it now. Have him in and get it over. Then let the lad go.
no, I can't do that yet. I'm sorry, but he will have to wait.
Now, look here, Inspector.
He must wait his turn.
You see?
No, I don't. And please be quiet, Sheila.
Inspector, I have told you before. I don't like the tone, nor the way you are handling this inquiry. And I don't propose to give you much rope.
You needn't give me any rope.
No, he's giving us a rope so that we will hang ourselves.
What's the matter with that child?
Overexcited, and she refuses to go. Well, come along. What is it you want to know?
At the end of January last year, this girl, Eva Smith, had to leave Millwards because Miss Burling compelled them to discharge her, and then she stopped being Eva Smith, looking for a job, and became Daisy Renton with other ideas. Mr. Croft, when did you first get to know her?
Where did you get the idea that I didn't know her?
It's no use, Gerald. You're wasting time.
As soon as I mentioned the name Daisy Renton, it was obvious you had known her. You gave yourself away at once.
Of course, he did.
And anyhow, I knew already. When and where did you first meet her?
All right, if you must have it. I met her first sometime in March last year in the store spa at the palace. I mean, the Palace Music Hall here in Brumley.
Well, we didn't think you meant Buckingham Palace.
Thanks. You are going to be a great help, I can see. You have said your piece, and you are obviously going to hate this. So why on earth don't you leave us to it?
Nothing would induce me. I want to understand exactly what happens when a man says he's so busy at works that he can hardly ever find time to come and see the girl he's supposed to be in love with. I wouldn't miss it for worlds.
Yes, Mr. Croft, in the stalls bar at the Palace Variety Theatre.
I happened to look in one night after a long dull day, and as the show wasn't very bright, I went down into the bar for a drink. It is a favorite haunt of women of the town.
Women of the town?
Yes, but I see no point in mentioning the subject, especially
It would be much better if Sheila didn't listen to this story at all.
But you're forgetting. I am supposed to be engaged to the hero of it. Go on, Gerald. You went down into the bar, which is the favorite haunt of the women of the town.
I am glad I amuse you.
Come along, Mr. Croft. What happened?
I didn't propose to stay long down there. But then I noticed a girl who looked quite different. She was very pretty, soft brown hair and big dark eyes. My God.
What's the matter?
Sorry, I have suddenly realized that she is dead.
Yes, she is dead.
And probably between us. We killed her.
Sheila, don't talk nonsense.
You wait, mother.
Go on, please.
The girl saw me looking at her and then gave me a glance that was nothing less than a cry for help. And then I told her that if she didn't want any more of that sort of thing, she would better let me take her out of there. She agreed at once.
Where did you go?
We went along to the county hotel, which I knew would be quiet at that time of night. And we had a drink or two and talked.
Did she drink much at the time?
No, she only had a port and a lemonade or some such concoction.
She talked about herself?
Yes, I asked her questions about herself. She told me her name was Daisy Renton, that she had lost both parents, that she came originally from somewhere outside Bramley. She also told me she had a job in one of the works here and had to leave after a strike. She said something about the shop too, but wouldn't say which it was. And she was deliberately vague about what happened. I couldn't get any exact details from her about herself, just because she felt I was interested and friendly. But at the same time, she wanted to be Daisy Renton and not Eva Smith. In fact, I heard that name for the first time tonight. What she did let slip, though she didn't mean to, was that she was desperately hard up and at that moment was actually hungry. I made the people at the county find some food for her.
And then you decided to keep her as your mistress?
What?
Of course, mother. It was obvious from the start. Go on, Gerald. Don't mind mother.
I discovered, not that night, but 2 nights later, we met again. Not accidentally this time, of course. That in fact, she hadn't a penny and was going to be turned out of the miserable back room she had. It happened that a friend of mine, Charlie Brunswick, had gone off to Canada for 6 months and had let me have the key of a nice little set of rooms he had in Morgan Terrace and had asked me to keep an eye on them for him and use them if I wanted to. So I insisted on Daisy moving into those rooms and I made her take some money to keep her going there. I want you to understand that I didn't install her there so that I could make love to her. I made her go to Morgan Terrace because I was sorry for her and didn't like the idea of her going back to Palace Bar. I didn't ask for anything in return.
I see.
Yes. But why are you saying that to him? You ought to be saying it to me.
I suppose I ought really. I am sorry, Sheila. Somehow
I know. Somehow he makes you.
But she became your mistress?
Yes, I suppose it was inevitable. She was young and pretty and warm-hearted and intensely grateful. I became at once the most important person in her life. You understand?
Yes, she was a woman. She was lonely. Were you in love with her?
Just what I was going to ask.
I really must protest.
Why should you do any protesting? It was you who turned the girl out in the first place.
Well, I only did what any employer might have done. And I don't see why my daughter, a young unmarried girl, is being dragged into this.
Your daughter isn't living on the moon. She is here in Brumley too.
Yes, and it was I who had the girl turned out of a job at Millwards. And I am supposed to be engaged to Gerald. And I am not a child. Don't forget. I have right to know. Were you in love with her, Gerald?
it's hard to say. I didn't feel about her as she felt about me.
Of course not. You were the wonderful fairy prince. You must have adored it, Gerald.
All right, I did for a time. Nearly any man would have done.
That's probably about the best thing you have said tonight. At least, it's honest. Did you go and see her every night?
No, I wasn't telling you a complete lie when I said I had been very busy at the works all that time. We were very busy. But of course, I did see a good deal of her.
I don't think we want any further details of this disgusting affair.
I do. And anyhow, we haven't had any details yet.
And you are not going to have any. You know, it wasn't disgusting.
It's disgusting to me.
Yes, but after all, you didn't come into this. Did you, mother?
Is there anything else you want to know? That you ought to know?
Yes. When did this affair end?
I can tell you exactly. In the first week of September, I had to go away for several weeks then on business. And by that time, Daisy knew it was coming to an end. So I broke it off definitely before I went.
How did she take it?
Better than I had hoped. She was very gallant about it.
That was nice for you.
No, it wasn't. She told me she had been happier than she had ever been before, but that she knew it couldn't last, hadn't expected it to last. She didn't blame me at all. Perhaps I would feel better about it.
She had to move out of those rooms?
Yes. She had saved a little money during the summer. She had lived very economically on what I had allowed her and didn't want to take more from me. But I insisted on a parting gift of enough money, though it wasn't so very much to see her through to the end of the year.
Did she tell you what she proposed to do after you had left her?
No, she refused to talk about that. I got the idea once or twice from what she said that she thought of leaving Bromley. Whether she did or not, I don't know. Did she?
Yes. She went away for about 2 months to some seaside place.
By herself?
Yes. I think she went away to be alone, to be quiet, to remember all that had happened between you.
How do you know that?
She kept a rough sort of diary. And she said there that she had to go away and be quiet and remember, just to make it last longer. She felt there would never be anything as good again for her. So she had to make it last longer.
I see. Well, I never saw her again. And that's all I can tell you.
It's all I want to know from you.
In that case, as I'm rather more upset by this business than I probably appear to be, and well, I would like to be alone for a while. I would be glad if you would let me go.
Go where? Home?
No, I will just go out, walk about for a while. If you don't mind, I will come back.
All right, Mr. Croft.
But just in case you forget or decide not to come back, Gerald, I think you better take this with you.
I see. Well, I was expecting this.
I don't dislike you as I did half an hour ago, Gerald. In fact, in some odd way, I rather respect you more than I have ever done before. I knew anyhow you were lying about those months last year when you hardly came near me. I knew there was something fishy about that time. And now at least you have been honest. And I believe what you told us about the way you helped her at first. But this has made a difference. You and I are in the same people who sat down to dinner here. We would have to start all over again, getting to know each other.
Now, Sheila, I'm not defending him. But you must understand that a lot of young men.
Don't interfere, please, Father. Gerald knows what I mean. And you apparently don't.
Yes, I know what you mean. But I'm coming back if I may.
All right.
Well, really, I don't know. I think we have just about come to an end of this wretched business.
I don't think so. Excuse me.
You know, you never showed him that photograph of her.
No, it wasn't necessary. And I thought it better not to.
You have a photograph of this girl?
Yes, I think you would better look at it.
I don't see any particular reason why I should.
Probably not. But you would better look at it.
Very well.
You recognize her?
No, why should I?
Of course. She might have changed lately. But I can't believe she could have changed so much.
I don't understand you, Inspector.
You mean you don't choose to do, Mrs. Burling?
I meant what I said.
You are not telling me the truth.
I beg your pardon.
Look here. I'm not going to have this, Inspector. You will apologize at once.
Apologize for what? Doing my duty?
No, for being so offensive about it. I'm a public man.
Public men, Mr. Burling, have responsibilities as well as privileges.
Possibly. But you weren't asked to come here to talk to me about my responsibilities.
Let's hope not. Though, I am beginning to wonder.
Does that mean anything, Sheila?
It means that we have no excuse now for putting on airs. And that if we have any sense, we won't try. Father threw this girl out because she asked for decent wages. I went and pushed her further out right into the streets just because I was angry and she was pretty. Gerald set her up as his mistress and then dropped her when it suited him. And now you are pretending you don't recognize her from that photograph? I admit I don't know why you should. But I know jolly well you did in fact recognize her from the way you looked. And if you're not telling the truth, why should the inspector apologize? And can't you see, both of you, you're making it worse.
That was the door again.
Gerald must have come back.
Unless your son has just gone out.
I will see.
Mrs. Burling, you are a member, a prominent member of the Brimley Women's Charity Organization, aren't you?
Go on, mother, you might as well admit it. Yes, she is. Why?
It's an organization to which women in distress can appeal for help in various forms. Isn't that so?
Yes, we have done a great deal of useful work in helping deserving cases.
There was a meeting of the interviewing committee 2 weeks ago.
I dare say there was.
You know very well there was, Mrs. Burling. You were in the chair.
And then I was. What business is it of yours?
Do you want me to tell you in plain words?
That must have been Eric.
Have you been up to his room?
Yes, and I called out on both landings. It must have been Eric we heard go out then.
Silly boy, where can he have gone to?
I can't imagine. But he was in one of his excitable cure moods. And even though we don't need him here,
We do need him here. And if he is not back soon, I shall have to go and find him.
He's probably just gone to cool off. He will be back soon.
I hope so.
Why should you hope so?
I will explain why. When you have answered my questions, Mrs. Burling,
is there any reason why my wife should answer questions from you, Inspector?
yes, a very good reason. You will remember that Mr. Croft told us, quite truthfully, I believe, that he hadn't spoken to or seen Eva Smith since last September. But Mrs. Burling spoke to and saw her only 2 weeks ago.
Mother?
Is this true?
Yes, quite true.
She appealed to your organization for help.
Yes,
Not as Eva Smith?
No, nor as Stacy Denton.
As what then?
First, she called herself Mrs. Berlin.
Mrs. Burling?
Yes, I think it was simply a piece of gross impertinence, quite deliberate and natural. That was one of the things that prejudiced me against her case.
And I should think so. Damned impudence.
You admit being prejudiced against her case?
Yes,
Mother, she has just died a horrible death. Don't forget.
I'm sorry, but I think she had only herself to blame.
Was it owing to your influence as the most prominent member of the committee that help was refused to the girl?
Possibly.
Was it or was it not your influence?
Yes, it was. I didn't like her manner. She had impertinently made use of our name. Though she pretended afterwards, it just happened to be the first she thought of. She had to admit, after I began questioning her, that she had no claim to the name, that she wasn't married, and that the story she told first about her husband who deserted her was quite false. It didn't take me long to get the truth or some of the truth out of her.
Why did she want help?
You know very well why she wanted help.
No, I don't. I know why she needed help. But as I wasn't there, I don't know what she asked from your committee.
I don't think we need discuss it.
You have no hope of not discussing it, Mrs. Burling.
If you think you can bring any pressure to bear upon me, Inspector, you are quite mistaken. Unlike the other three, I did nothing I'm ashamed of or that won't bear investigation. The girl asked for assistance. We were asked to look carefully into the claims made upon us. I wasn't satisfied with the girl's claim. She seemed to me not a good case, and so I used my influence to have it refused. And in spite of what's happened to the girl since, I consider I did my duty. So, if I prefer not to discuss it any further, you have no power to make me change my mind.
Yes, I have.
No, you haven't. Simply because I have done nothing wrong and you know it.
I think you did something terribly wrong and that you are going to spend the rest of your life regretting it. I wish you had been with me tonight in the infirmary. You would have seen.
No, no, please. Not that again. I have imagined it enough already.
Then the next time you imagine it, just remember that this girl was going to have a child.
No. Oh, horrible. Horrible. How could she have wanted to kill herself?
Because she had been turned out and turned down too many times. This was the end.
Mother, you must have known.
It was because she was going to have a child that she went for assistance to your mother's committee.
Look here. This wasn't Gerald Croft.
No, nothing to do with him.
Thank goodness for that. Though, I don't know why I should care now.
And you have nothing further to tell me, huh?
I will tell you what I told her. Go and look for the father of the child. It's his responsibility.
That doesn't make it any the less yours. She came to you for help at a time when no woman could have needed it more. And you not only refused it yourself, But saw to it that the others refused it too. She was here alone, friendless, almost penniless, desperate. She needed not only money, but advice, sympathy, friendliness. You have had children. You must have known what she was feeling. And you slammed the door in her face.
Mother, I think it was cruel and vile.
I must say, Sybil, when this comes out at the inquest, it isn't going to do us much good. The press might easily take it up.
Oh, stop it, both of you. And please remember, before you start accusing me of anything again, that it wasn't I who had her turned out of her employment, which probably began it all. In the circumstances, I think I was justified. The girl had begun by telling us a pack of lies. Afterwards, when I got at the truth, I discovered that she knew who the father was. She was quite certain about that. And so, I told her it was her business to make him responsible. Oh, a lot of silly nonsense.
What was it?
Whatever it was, I know it made me finally lose all patience with her. She was giving herself ridiculous airs. She was claiming elaborate fine feelings and scruples that was simply absurd in a girl in her position.
Her position now is that she lies with a burned out inside on a slab. Don't stammer and yammer at me again, man. I'm losing all patience with you people. What did she say?
She said that the father was only a youngster, silly and wild, and drinking too much. There couldn't be any question of marrying him. It would be wrong for them both. He had given her money, but she didn't want to take any more money from him.
Why didn't she want to take any more money from him?
All a lot of nonsense. I didn't believe a word of it.
I am not asking you if you believed it. I want to know what she said. Why didn't she want to take any more money from this boy?
Oh, she had some fancy reason. As if a girl of that sort would ever refuse money.
I warn you, you are making it worse for yourself. What reason did she give for not taking any more money?
Her story was that he had said something one night when he was drunk that gave her the idea that it wasn't his money.
Where had he got it from then?
He had stolen it.
So, she had come to you for assistance because she didn't want to take stolen money.
That's the story she finally told. After I had refused to believe her original story. Therefore, you are quite wrong to suppose I shall regret what I did.
But if her story was true, if this boy had been giving her stolen money, then she came to you for help because she wanted to keep this youngster out of any more trouble. Isn't that so?
Possibly, but it sounded ridiculous to me. So, I was perfectly justified in advising my committee not to allow her claim for assistance.
You are not even sorry now when you know what happened to the girl.
I'm sorry. She should have come to such a horrible end, but I accept no blame for it at all.
Who is to blame then?
First, the girl herself.
For letting father and me have her chucked out of her jobs.
Secondly, I blame the young man who was the father of the child she was going to have. He should be made an example of. If the girl's death is due to anybody, then it's due to him.
And if her story is true, that he was stealing money,
There is no point in assuming that.
but Suppose we do, what then?
Then he would be entirely responsible because the girl wouldn't have come to us and have been refused assistance if it had not been for him.
So, he is the chief culprit anyhow.
Certainly, and he ought to be dealt with very severely.
Mother, stop! Stop!
Be quiet, Sheila.
You are behaving like an hysterical child tonight. And if you would take some steps to find this young man and then make sure that he is compelled to confess in public his responsibility instead of staying here asking quite unnecessary questions, then you really would be doing your duty.
Don't worry, Mrs. Burling. I shall do my duty.
I am glad to hear it.
No hushing up, huh? Make an example of the young man, huh? Public confession of responsibility.
Certainly, I consider it your duty. And now, no doubt, you would like to say good night.
Not yet. I am waiting
Waiting for what?
to do my duty.
Now, Mother, don't you see?
But surely, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Look, Inspector, you are not trying to tell us that my boy is mixed up in this.
If he is, then we know what to do, don't we? Mrs. Burling has just told us.
My God! But look here.
I don't believe it. I won't believe it.
Mother, I begged you, and I begged you to stop.
Stand your attitude.
Neither do I. If you had any sense of loyalty,
Just a minute, Mr. Burling. There'll be plenty of time when I have gone for you all to adjust your family relationships. But now, I must hear what your son has to tell me, and I will be obliged if you will let us get on without any further interruptions. Now then,
Could I have a drink first?
no.
yes, I know he is your son and this is your house. But look at him. He needs a drink now, just to see him through.
All right, go on. I understand a lot of things now. I didn't understand before.
Don't start on that. I want to get on. When did you first meet this girl?
One night, last November,
Where did you meet her?
in the palace bar, I had been there an hour or so with 2 or 3 chaps. I was a bit squeefy.
What happened then?
I began talking to her and stood her a few drinks. I was rather far gone by the time we had to go.
Was she drunk too?
She told me afterwards that she was a bit, chiefly because she had not had much to eat that day.
Why had she gone there?
She wasn't the usual sort. But, well, I suppose she didn't know what to do. There was some woman who wanted to help her go there. I never quite understood about that.
You went with her to her lodgings that night?
Yes, I insisted, it seems. I'm not very clear about it. But afterwards she told me she didn't want me to go in. But that, well, I was in that state when a chap easily turns nasty. And I threatened to make a row.
So, she let you in?
Yes, and that's when it happened. And I didn't even remember. That's the hellish thing. Oh my God, how stupid it all is.
Oh, Eric. How could you?
Sheila, take your mother along to the drawing room.
But I want to.
You heard what I said. Go on, Sybil.
When did you meet her again?
About a fortnight afterwards.
By appointment?
No. And I couldn't remember her name or where she lived. It was all very vague. But I happened to see her again in the palace bar. Yes, though that time I wasn't so bad.
But you took her home again.
Yes, and this time we talked a bit. She told me something about herself, and I talked too. Told her my name and what I did.
And you made love again?
Yes, I wasn't in love with her or anything, but I liked her. She was pretty and a good sport.
So, you had to go to bed with her?
Well, I'm old enough to be married, aren't I? And I am not married. And I hate these fat old tarts around the town. The ones I see some of your respectable friends with.
I don't want any of that talk from you.
I don't want any of it from either of you. Settle it afterwards. Did you arrange to see each other after that?
Yes, and the next time, or the time after that, she told me she thought she was going to have a baby. She wasn't quite sure, and then she was.
And of course, she was very worried about it.
Yes, and so was I. I was in hell of a state about it.
Did she suggest that you ought to marry her?
No, she didn't want me to marry her. Said I didn't love her and all that. In a way, she treated me as if I were a kid, though I was nearly as old as she was.
So, what did you propose to do?
Well, she hadn't a job and didn't feel like trying again for one. And she had no money left. So I insisted on giving her enough money to keep her going until she refused to take any more.
How much did you give her altogether?
I suppose 50 pounds all told.
50 pounds? On top of drinking and going around the town? Where did you get 50 pounds from?
That's my question too.
I got it from the office.
My office?
Yes,
You mean you stole the money?
not really.
What do you mean? Not really?
This isn't my fault.
I'm sorry, Arthur, but I simply couldn't stay in there. I had to know what is happening.
Well, I can tell you what is happening. He has admitted he was responsible for the girl's condition. And now he is telling us he supplied her with the money he stole from the office.
Eric, you stole money?
No, not really. I intended to pay it back.
We have heard that story before. How could you have paid it back?
I would have managed somehow. And I had to have some money.
I don't understand how you could take as much as that out of the office without somebody knowing.
There were some small accounts to collect, and I asked for cash.
Gave the firm's receipt and then kept the money, huh?
Yes,
You must give me a list of those accounts. I have got to cover this up as soon as I can. You damned fool. Why didn't you come to me when you found yourself in this mess?
because you are not the kind of father a child could go to when he is in trouble. That's why.
Don't talk to me like that. Your trouble is you have been spoilt.
And my trouble is that I haven't much time. You will be able to divide the responsibility between you when I have gone. Just one last question. That's all. The girl discovered that this money you were giving her was stolen. Didn't she?
Yes, that was the worst of all. She wouldn't take any more, and she didn't want to see me again. But how did you know that? Did she tell you?
No. She told me nothing. I never spoke to her.
She told mother.
Sheila,
Well, he has to know.
She told you? Did she come here? But then she couldn't have done. She didn't even know I lived here. What happened?
Come on, don't just look like that. Tell me what happened.
I will tell you. She went to your mother's committee for help after she had done with you. Your mother refused that help.
Then you killed her. She came to you to protect me, and you turned her away. Yes, and you killed her. And the child she would have had to, my child, your own grandchild. Damn you! Damn you!
no, Eric, please. I didn't know. I didn't understand.
You don't understand anything. You never did. You never even tried.
Eric, don't!
Why? You hysterical young fool. Get back, or I will.
Stop and be quiet for a moment and listen to me. I don't need to know anymore. Neither do you. This girl killed herself and died a horrible death. But each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. Never forget it. But then, I don't think you ever will. Remember what you did, Mrs. Burling? You turned her away when she most needed help. You refused her even the pitiable little bit of organized charity you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did.
My God, I am not likely to forget.
Just used her for the end of a stupid drunken evening, as if she was an animal, a thing, not a person. No, you won't forget.
I know. I had her turned out of a job. I started it.
You helped, but you didn't start it. You started it. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22. You made her pay a heavy price for that. And now, she will make you pay a heavier price still.
Look, Inspector, I would give thousands. Yes, thousands.
You are offering the money at the wrong time, Mr. Burling. No, I don't think any of you will forget. Nor that young man, Croft. Though he at least had some affection for her and made her happy for a time. Well, Eva Smith is gone. But there are millions and millions and millions of Eva Smith and John Smiths still left with us, with their lives, their hopes and fears, their suffering and chance of happiness, all intertwined with our lives and what we think and say and do. We don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. And I tell you that the time will soon come when, if men will not learn that lesson, then they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. Good night.
You are the one I blame for this.
I'll bet I am.
Yes, and you don't realize yet all you have done. Most of this is bound to come out. There will be a public scandal.
Well, I don't care now.
You don't seem to care about anything. But I care. I was almost certain for a knighthood in the next honors list.
Oh, for God's sake, what does it matter now? Whether they give you a knighthood or not?
It doesn't matter to you. Apparently, nothing matters to you. But it may interest you to know that until every penny of that money you stole is repaid, you will work for nothing. And there is going to be no more of this ringing round the town and picking up women in the palace bar.
I should think not, Eric. I am absolutely ashamed of you.
Well, I don't blame you. But don't forget, I am ashamed of you as well. Yes, both of you.
Drop that. There is every excuse for what both your mother and I did. It turned out unfortunately. That's all.
That's all?
Well, what have you to say?
I don't know where to begin.
Then don't begin. Nobody wants you to.
I behaved badly too. I know I did. I am ashamed of it. But now, you are beginning all over again to pretend that nothing much has happened.
Nothing much has happened. Haven't I already said there will be a public scandal? Unless we are lucky. And who here will suffer from that more than I will?
But that's not what I am talking about. I don't care about that. The point is, you don't seem to have learned anything.
Don't I? Well, you are quite wrong there. I have learned plenty tonight. And you don't want me to tell you what I have learned, I hope. When I look back on tonight, and I think of what I was feeling, when the five of us sat down to dinner at the table.
Yes. And do you remember what you said to Gerald and me after dinner? When you were feeling so pleased with yourself, you told us that a man has to make his own way, look after himself, and mind his own business, and that we weren't to take any notice of these cranks who tell us that everybody has to look after everybody else, as if we were all mixed up together. Do you remember? Yes. And then one of those cranks walked in, the inspector. I didn't notice you told him that it's every man for himself.
Is that when the inspector came? Just after father has said that?
Yes, what of it?
Now, what's the matter, Sheila?
It's strange, very strange.
I know what you're going to say because I have been wondering myself.
It doesn't much matter now, of course. But was he really a police inspector?
Well, if he wasn't, it matters a devil of a lot. Makes all the difference.
No, it doesn't.
Don't talk rubbish. Of course, it does.
Well, it doesn't to me. And it would not to you either. Don't be childish, Sheila. I'm not being. If you want to know, it's you two who are being childish, trying not to face the facts.
I won't have that sort of talk. Any more of that. And you leave this room.
That will be terrible for her, won't it?
I'm going anyhow in a minute or two. But don't you see? If all that's come out tonight is true, then it doesn't much matter who it was who made us confess. And it was true, wasn't it? You turned the girl out of one job. I had her turned out of another. Gerald kept her at the time when he was supposed to be too busy to see me. Eric, well, we know what Eric did. And mother hardened her heart and gave her the final push that finished her. That's what is important, and not whether a man is a police inspector or not.
He was our police inspector, alright.
That's what I mean, Eric. But if it's any comfort to you, and it wasn't to me, I have an idea, and I had it all along vaguely. That there was something curious about him. He never seemed like an ordinary police inspector.
You are right. I felt it too. Didn't you?
Well, I must say, this manner was quite extraordinary. So rude and assertive.
Then, look at the way he talked to me, telling me to shut up and so on. He must have known I was an ex-Lord Mayor and a magistrate and so forth. Besides, the way he talked, you remember? I mean, they don't talk like that. I have heard dealings with dozens of them.
Alright, but it doesn't make any real difference, you know?
Of course, it does.
No, Sheila is right. It doesn't.
That's comic. That is coming from you. You are the one it makes most difference to. You have confessed to theft, and now he knows all about it, and he can bring it out at the inquest, and then if necessary, carry it to court. He can't do anything to your mother and Sheila and me, except to perhaps make us look a bit ashamed of ourselves in public. But as for you, he can ruin you, you know?
We hardly ever told him anything. He didn't know. Did you notice that?
That's nothing. He had a bit of information left by the girl and made a few smart guesses. But the fact remains that if we hadn't talked so much, he would have had little to go on. And really, when I come to think of it, why you all had to go letting everything come out like that beats me.
It's all right talking like that now. But he made us confess.
He certainly didn't make me confess, as you call it. I told him quite plainly that I thought I had done no more than my duty.
Oh, mother.
The fact is, you allowed yourselves to be bluffed. Yes, bluffed.
Now really, Arthur,
No, not you, my dear, but these two. That fellow obviously didn't like us. He was prejudiced from the start. Probably a socialist or some sort of crime. He talked like one. And then, instead of standing up to him, you let him bluff you into talking about your private affairs. You ought to have stood up to him.
Well, I didn't notice you standing up to him.
No, because by that time you had admitted you had been taking money. What chance had I after that? I was a fool not to have insisted upon seeing him alone.
That wouldn't have worked.
Of course, it wouldn't.
really, from the way you children talk, you might be wanting to help him instead of us. Now, just be quiet so that your father can decide what we ought to do.
Yes, well, we will have to do something and get to work quickly too. Now, who is this? Had I better go?
No, Edward will go. I asked him to wait up, to make some tea.
It might be Gerald coming back.
Yes, of course. I had forgotten about him.
Here is Mr. Croft.
I hope you don't mind my coming back.
No, of course not, Gerald.
I had a special reason for coming. When did that inspector go?
Only a few minutes ago. He put us all through it.
Sheila,
Gerald might as well know.
Now, we needn't to bother him with all that stuff.
All right. But we are all in it up to the neck. It got worse after you left.
How did he behave?
He was frightening.
If you ask me, he behaved in a very peculiar and suspicious manner.
The rude way he spoke to Mr. Burling and me, it was quite extraordinary.
You know something. What is it?
That man wasn't a police officer.
What?
Are you certain?
I am almost certain. That's what I came back to tell you.
Good lad. You asked about him, right?
Yes, I met a police sergeant I know down the road. I asked him about this Inspector Gould and described the chap carefully to him. He swore there wasn't any Inspector Gould or anybody like him on the force here.
You didn't tell him?
No. Passed it off by saying I had been having an argument with somebody. But the point is, this sergeant was dirt certain they hadn't any inspector at all, like the chap who came here.
By Jingo, a fake.
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I say? I couldn't imagine a real police inspector talking like that to us.
Well, you were right. There isn't any such inspector. We have been had.
I am going to make certain of this.
What are you going to do?
Ring up the Chief Constable, Colonel Roberts.
Careful what you say, dear.
Of course. Brumley 8752. I was going to do this anyhow. I have heard my suspicions all along. Colonel Roberts, please. Mr. Arthur Burling here. Oh, Roberts, Burling here. Sorry to ring you up so late, but can you tell me if an Inspector Gould has joined your staff lately? Gould, G-O-O-L-E, a new man, tall, clean-shaven. I see. Yes. Well, that settles it. No, just a little argument we were having here. Good night. There is no Inspector Gould on the police. That man definitely wasn't a police inspector at all. As Gerald says, we have been heard.
I felt it all the time. He never talked like one. He never even looked like one.
This makes a difference, you know. In fact, it makes all the difference.
Of course.
I suppose we are all nice people now.
If you have nothing more sensible than that to say, Sheila, you would better keep quiet. She's right, though, and you would better keep quiet anyhow. If that had been a police inspector, and he had heard you confess.
Arthur, careful.
Yes.
You see, Gerald, you haven't to know the rest of our crimes and idiocies.
That's all right. I don't want to. What do you make of this business now? Was it a hoax?
Somebody put that fellow up to coming here and hoaxing us. There are people in this town who dislike me enough to do that. We ought to have seen through it from the first. In the ordinary way, I believe I would have done. But coming like that, bang on top of our little celebration, just when we were all feeling so pleased with ourselves, naturally, it took me by surprise.
I wish I had been here when that man first arrived. I would have asked him a few questions before I allowed him to ask us any.
It's all right saying that now.
I was the only one of you who didn't give in to him. And now I say we must discuss this business quietly and sensibly and decide if there is anything to be done about it.
You are absolutely right, my dear. Already we have discovered one important fact that that fellow was a fraud and we have been hoaxed. And that may not be the end of it by any means.
I am sure it isn't.
You are a good. Eric, sit down.
I am all right.
All right? You are anything but all right. You needn't stand there
As if what?
as if you had nothing to do with this. Just remember your own position, young man. If anybody is up to the neck in this business, you are. So, you would better take some interest in it.
I do take some interest in it. I take too much. That's my trouble.
It's mine too.
Now listen, you two. If you're still feeling on edge, then the least you can do is to keep quiet. Leave this to us. Now it's our turn.
Our turn to do what?
To behave sensibly, Sheila, which is more than you are doing.
What is the use of talking about behaving sensibly? You are beginning to pretend now that nothing really happened at all. And I can't see it like that. This girl is still dead, isn't she? Nobody has brought her to life, have they?
That's just what I feel, Eric. And it's what they don't seem to understand.
Whoever that chap was, the fact remains that I did what I did, and mother did what she did, and the rest of you did what you did to her. It's still the same rotten story, whether it's being told to a police inspector or to somebody else. According to you, I ought to feel a lot better. Gerard, I stole some money. You might as well know. I don't care. Let him know. The money is not the important thing. It's what happened to that girl and what we all did to her. That matters. And I still feel the same about it. And that's why I don't feel like sitting down and having a nice cozy talk.
And Eric is absolutely right. And it is the best thing any one of us has said tonight. And it makes me feel a bit less ashamed of us. You're just beginning to pretend all over again.
Look, for God's sake.
Arthur!
Well, my dear, they are so damned exasperating. They just won't try to understand our position or to see the difference between a lot of stuff like this coming out in a private and a downright public scandal.
And I say, the girl is dead and we all have to kill her. And that's what matters.
And I say, either stop shouting or get out. Some fathers I know would have kicked you out of the house anyhow by this time. So hold your tongue if you want to stay here.
I don't give a damn now whether I stay here or not.
You will stay here long enough to give me an account of that money you stole. Yes, and to pay it back too.
But that won't bring Eva Smith back to life, will it?
And it doesn't alter the fact that we all have to kill her.
But is it a fact?
Of course it is. You don't know the whole story yet.
I suppose you're going to prove now. You didn't spend last summer keeping this girl instead of seeing me, huh?
I did keep a girl last summer. I have admitted it. And I'm sorry, Sheila.
Well, I must admit, you came out of it better than the rest of us. The inspector said that.
He wasn't an inspector.
Well, he inspected us, all right. And don't let's start dodging and pretending now. Between us, we drove that girl to commit suicide.
Did we? Who says so? Because I say there is no more real evidence we did than there was that this chap was a police inspector
Of course, there is.
No, there isn't. Look at it. A man comes here pretending to be a police officer. It's a hoax of some kind. Now,
We all admitted it.
all right, you all admitted something to do with the girl. But how do you know it's the same girl? Look here, Mr. Burley. You sacked a girl called Eva Smith. You have forgotten. But he shows you a photograph of her, and then you remember, right?
Yes, that part is straightforward enough. But what then?
Well, then he happens to know that Sheila once had a girl sacked from Milward's shop. He tells us that it is this same Eva Smith, and he shows her a photograph that she recognizes.
Yes, the same photograph.
How do you know it is the same photograph? Did you see the one your father looked at?
No, I didn't.
And did your father see the one he showed you?
No, he didn't. And I see. What do you mean now?
We have no proof it was the same photograph, and therefore no proof it was the same girl. Now take me. I never saw a photograph, remember? He caught me out by suddenly announcing that this girl changed her name to Daisy Renton. I gave myself away at once because I had known a Daisy Renton.
And there wasn't the slightest proof that this Daisy Renton was really Eva Smith. We have only his word for it. And we had his word for it that he was a police inspector. And we know now he was lying. So he could have been lying all the time.
Of course he could. Probably was. Now, what happened after I left?
I was upset because Eric had left the house. And this man said that if Eric didn't come back, he would have to go and find him. Well, that made me feel worse still. And his manner was so severe. Then quite suddenly he said, I had seen Eva Smith only 2 weeks ago.
Those were his exact words.
And like a fool, I said, yes, I had.
I don't see now why you did that. She didn't call herself Eva Smith when she came to see you at the committee, did she?
No, of course, she didn't. But feeling so worried, when he suddenly turned on me with those questions, I answered more or less as he wanted me to answer.
But mother, don't forget that he showed you a photograph of the girl before that. And you obviously recognized it.
Did anybody else see it?
No, he showed it only to me.
Then, don't you see? There is still no proof it was really the same girl. He might have shown you the photograph of any girl who applied to the committee. And how do we know she was really Eva Smith or Daisy Renton?
Gerald is dead right. He could have used a different photograph each time. And we would be none the wiser. We may all have been recognizing different girls.
Exactly. Did he ask you to identify a photograph, Eric?
No, he didn't need a photograph by the time he had got round to me. But obviously, it must have been the girl I knew who went to see mother.
Why must it?
She said she needed help because she wouldn't take any more stolen money. And the girl I knew had told me that already.
Even then, that may have been all nonsense.
I don't see much nonsense about it when a girl goes and kills herself. You lot may be letting yourselves out nicely, but I can't. nor can mother. We did her in all right.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Don't be in such a hurry to put yourself into court. That interview with your mother could have been just as much as a put of job, like all this police inspector business. The whole damn thing can have been a piece of bluff.
How can it? The girl is dead, isn't she?
What girl? There were probably 4 or 5 different girls.
That doesn't matter to me. The one I knew is dead.
Is she? How do we know she is?
That's right. You have got it. How do we know any girl killed herself today?
Now answer that one. Let's look at it from this fellow's point of view. We were having a little celebration here and feeling rather pleased with ourselves. Now, he has to work a trick on us. Well, the first thing he has to do is give us such a shock that after that he can bluff us all the time. So, he starts right off. A girl has just died in the infirmary. She drank some strong disinfectant, died in agony.
All right, don't pile it on.
There you are, you see? Just repeating it shakes you a bit. And that's what he had to do. Shake us at once. And then start questioning us until we didn't know where we were. Oh, let's admit that. He had the laugh of us, all right.
He could laugh his head off if I knew it really was all a hoax.
I am convinced it is. No police inquiry. No one girl that all this happened to. No scandal.
And no suicide?
We can settle that now
How?
by ringing up the infirmary. Either there is a dead girl there or there isn't.
It will look a bit queer, won't it? Ringing up at this time of night?
I don't mind doing it.
And if there isn't?
Anyway, we'll see. Brumley 8986? Is that the infirmary? This is Mr. Gerard Croft of Cross Limited. Yes, we are rather worried about one of our employees. Have we had a girl brought in this afternoon who committed suicide by drinking disinfectant or any like suicide? Yes, I'll wait. Yes? You are certain of that? I see. Well, thank you very much. Good night. No girl has died in there today. Nobody has been brought in after drinking disinfectant. They haven't had a suicide for months.
There you are. Proof positive. The whole story is just a lot of moonshine. Nothing but an elaborate sell. Nobody likes to be sold as badly as that. But for all that, Gerard, have a drink.
Thanks. I think I could just do with one now.
So could I.
And I must say, Gerald, you have argued this very cleverly. And I am most grateful.
Well, you see, while I was out of the house, I had time to cool off and think things out a little.
Yes, he didn't keep you on the run as he did the rest of us. I will admit now, he gave me a bit of a scare at the time. But I had a special reason for not wanting any public scandal just now. Well, here is to us. Come on, Sheila. Don't look like that. All over now.
The worst part is, but you're forgetting one thing. I still can't forget. Everything we said had happened. Really had happened. If it didn't end tragically, then that's lucky for us. But it might have done.
But the whole thing is different now. Come, you can see that, can't you? You all helped to kill her. And I wish you could have seen the look on your faces when he said that. Going to bed, young woman?
I want to get out of this. It frightens me the way you talk.
Nonsense. You will have a good laugh over it yet. Look, you would better ask Gerald for that ring you gave back to him, hadn't you? Then you will feel better.
You're pretending. Everything is just as it was before.
I am not.
No, but these others are.
Well, isn't it? We have been had. That's all.
So nothing really happened? So there's nothing to be sorry for? Nothing to learn? We can all go on behaving just as we did.
Well, why shouldn't we?
I tell you, whoever that inspector was, it was anything but a joke. You knew it then. You began to learn something. And now you have stopped. You are ready to go on in the same old way.
And you are not?
No, because I remember what he said, how he looked, and what he made me feel. Fire and blood and anguish. And it frightens me the way you talk. And I can't listen to any more of it.
And I agree with Sheila. It frightens me too. Well, go to bed then. And don't stand there being hysterical.
They are overtired. In the morning, they will be as amused as we are.
Everything's all right now, Sheila. What about this ring?
No, not yet. It's too soon. I must think.
Now, look at the pair of them. The famous younger generation who know it all. And they can't even take a joke. Yes? Mr. Berling speaking? What? Here? That was the police. A girl has just died on her way to the infirmary after swallowing some disinfectant. And the police inspector is on his way here to ask some questions.
An inspector has called.
I like a good cigar.
What an expression, Sheila.
Gerald?
Now, listen, darling.
Study the buffs.
And one line of inquiry at a time.